Thank you, Chairman, and I appreciate you holding this very important hearing. Something impacting every state in my own home state of Colorado. 2016, more than 1,000 cases of human trafficking were reported with our two major interstates that are running through our state and the cartel activity, unfortunately, that we're starting to see as well. We're seeing this impact a lot of our communities and obviously devastating an awful lot of lives. We do have my home area, the West Slope of Colorado, have a group that's called the West Slope Against Trafficking, and it's an anti-trafficking organization trying to be able to create awareness in Mesa County. The head of that organization recently said, one of the most important resources we should develop is a community awareness on what it looks like, what to do when you encounter it, and the knowledge of the crime is the best defense against it. Dr. Shelley, expanding that sentiment onto the financial services industry, is it difficult for financial institutions to be able to use analytical tools to be able to spot the patterns and data that may indicate suspicious or illegal behavior as regards trafficking?
I don't think it's difficult if you have the right skill set on board. I think too many banks have just former criminal investigators, and you need people with data analytics skills, you need people with social science skills, people who can help write algorithms. But fortunately today, there are many people who would be happy to work with the banking community, and the bankers, some of them who are proactive, are seeking help outside, not only with the law enforcement community, but with anybody that can help them. So that's not the problem. The problem is having enough allocated resources that a bank that needs to deal with its SARs that they're just drowning in allows them enough time of 10 or 20 people to do the kind of proactive and creative thinking that this requires. So that's the major challenge.
And some of the expanding on that, it caught my attention in your testimony you brought about the opioid crisis. We just had 2 roundtables in my district this last week. The impact, the expansion of that, are those some of the tells that we might be looking for to start to be able to be more proactive?
Absolutely. In fact, while you were on recess, I was doing some wonderful networking here with people who are looking at just this issue of the intersection of opioids and human trafficking. And there are cases that are being formed, there's evidence, and it's something that we tend to stovepipe of look at opioids or we look at human trafficking, but often the human traffickers are less careful than the drug traffickers, and it can help give us an enormous window into the way the opioids traffickers are operating.
I appreciate that, and I think that you speak to something very important, as has Ms. Front, in terms of trying to be able to be proactive as opposed to being reactive. Unfortunately, Ms. Front, you had to live this.
Yes.
Are there some areas that you could maybe point to that when we're looking at, it all revolves ultimately around finances, as you'd indicated. Where are some of the areas where you see us in the financial service sector to be able to be more proactive as opposed to just being reactive?
Well, once again, with the training to financial institutions, having survivors on their board and helping them with the training. But there was a gap, I think, that we're missing that we see a lot that isn't online, and one of them is pop-up shops, right? We love that concept of pop-up shops, but what we're seeing online is that these tattoo shops and barber shops are doing pop-up shops with stripping and young girls there and selling them online on Instagram and Facebook. So there's a whole development, right, where other business owners are actually cutting through that, where I'm saying, I'm coming to you and I'm saying, here, if you pay me $500, I get a cut of $3,000 off of that. I'll let you rent my space off of a building that I own. So we really have to do our reach to financial institutions on community levels so they can be aware of this and what's happening. And they're advertising this online of where the locations are throughout the different cities. So that connecting is important.
Great. I'm about out of time, but I'd like to ask the district attorney, is that something that you were looking at in terms of prosecution as well?
Yes, sir. We actually, I think public-private collaboration in this area is particularly important, and we work not only with the Thomson Reuters, we worked with the Thomson Reuters Foundation, which itself brought a group of large banks together in a working group so that we could provide to them the typologies of crime that we're seeing, so that the banks would understand what records they might have that might be relevant to building and proving cases. So we know here how the crime is being committed. Once the banks understand what records are involved and what to look for, they have the data. And I think because of the work of committees like this, and it's so important, when people understand the scope of the problem and actually understand it's out there, because we don't have a huge awareness of this issue in the United States, once businesses understand the scope of the problem, they want to jump on. I mean, they're good corporate citizens, and they think this is among the worst things that can be happening in America is to tolerate sex trafficking or human trafficking.